Once there was a guy who did try building a month a plane that would fly. Now you can watch that guy try get that plane in the sky, 'cause he had...
What do you call a guy who's crazy about airplanes, has the crazy idea he could build and fly one in 30 days, and is crazy enough to do it all on TV?
Well, no one could accuse you of insufficient ambition.
You call him plain crazy.
Plain Crazy, coming up next.
What can be done to improve safety out there on Chicago's lakefront with all the walkers, runners, bikers, skaters, dogs, baby carriages, and now quad cycles? That story coming up at 11 on Chicago Tonight.
LaSalle, who has enjoyed serving the financial needs of 4 generations of individuals and businesses all over the Chicago area, is pleased to support your window to the world by underwriting programming on WTTW. LaSalle, the bank that works.
Salutiamo Chicago.
You're watching
Channel 11,
your window to the world.
Ciao.
On the Chicago Tonight update, a friendlier IRS may be on the way. The president has signed a bill designed to mold the agency into a fairer tax collector. He was flanked at the bill signing by Republican lawmakers who wanted to share the credit. A Springfield insurance company says it plans to offer a policy to cover teachers and other school employees who fall victim to violence at school. Horace Mann Life Insurance Company says the policy will cost $4 a month and will give violence victims a $20,000 lump sum payment and coverage for hospital bills. On Wall Street, profit warnings and disappointments kept stocks falling today. The Dow Industrial Average fell 61 points. The Nasdaq Composite was down another 9 points. In sports, the Cubs lead Houston 1-0 in the third. The White Sox trail Toronto 4-0 in the seventh. Chicago's weather, cloudy tonight, low 65. Tomorrow, partly cloudy, less humid, high around 80. Stay tuned now for Plain Crazy.
Funding for this program was made possible in part by annual support from viewers like you.
Once there was a guy who did try building a month a plane that would fly. Now you can watch that guy try get that plane in the sky, 'cause he had high hopes. He had high hopes. He had high apple pie in the sky. Look, there goes another plain crazy guy.
The FedEx guy has come and gone already, and the package wasn't there. You said that you sent it to me.
Hi, I'm Bob Cringely. I make my living from computers, and frankly, it's a stressful life.
Oh, hold on just a second. Hello? 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 Okay.
I have 4 phone lines, 2 fax lines, and an internet connection. I get more than 100 emails a day. My desk is a mess. It really is like this. In addition to writing a weekly column, I run 2 software companies. If I didn't have a way to escape, I'd go crazy.
So I go flying.
Few things in life match the excitement of piloting your own plane. In the poet's words, loosing the surly bonds of earth. It's a freedom they could only dream of in Alcatraz. I love planes. I own 2 of them. I've built 5 of them in my life. And believe me, that's the greatest thrill of all, to fly a plane you've built yourself. It's the ultimate expression of rugged individualism. No factory-built planes for me.
So I set myself a challenge to build and fly an airplane in 30 days. I wanted to show that anyone with a few basic skills could do it. I knew it would be tough, but I had no idea what I was letting myself in for.
I went to hell and back.
I just want to crawl in a hole in the ground.
I felt misery.
Ralph's very special to me. Then I don't want to lose him.
Get out of here. Leave. Right now. I felt fury.
Or what?
And I felt joy.
Well, this is fun.
I ended up learning as much about myself as I did about plane making. This is the story of that painful journey, a journey to be recorded on videotape which will haunt me the rest of my life. It begins with a passion for planes, something shared by millions of guys like me.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we...
You find us all over the world, especially at air shows. We're equally at home at the biggest show of all in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, or with the more modest charms of Cranfield in England. We're not all the same, though. Some of us think nothing of spending $600,000 renovating planes like these super sexy World War II Mustangs. Others find as much pleasure flying little more than glorified hang gliders. And a few crazy guys get their kicks just writing down aircraft registration numbers. They're English, of course.
Hello, I'm from America.
We've come all the way from Blackpool.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
Now, what are the...
The yellow ones I've got photographs of.
Oh, all right.
The red underlined ones
So
I've
those count
seen.
double then?
No, not really, no, but they count.
All right.
I've got just over 22,000 now.
22,000?
Yeah.
You must have borrowed a few of those.
No, I've been spotting since 1955.
Oh my God. now, some of those planes are out of service.
Oh, yes.
Do they still, the numbers still count?
Yeah,
Yes.
of course it is.
All right, 22,000.
Air shows are a great place for me to try out my idea for a 30-day project. Because here are guys who can talk plane stuff till the sun sets.
The min power speed was lower than the stall speed.
Sure. You got an alternator.
Yeah.
But it comes in handy, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, it's wonderful.
It's just, it's as big as you can get in the Type 1 VW.
With the long stroke crankshaft.
Yeah.
Wax on the threads or grease or something.
People who build planes in garages are called home builders. We're a hardy breed, happy to spend months, even years, making our dreams come true.
It took me about 11 years and over 4,000 hours of construction time.
This took me 3,000 hours to build. Admittedly, there's a lot of design work I put into it.
It took me about 7 years to build, and I've been flying it for 10.
Took about 5 years on this one.
5 years.
Typically, it's about 1,500 to 2,000 hours of actual work. So it depends on your dedication and passion, I guess.
Because home builders live, breathe, and sleep planes, we don't mind how long it takes us to build one. But I've always thought it should be possible to build a plane in a summer vacation. Most of us could commit to a schedule like that. So I set myself the 30-day challenge with the added spur of a TV crew looking on.
Though I built several airplanes, I've never built one in less than 18 months. And yet when I look at it, it's hard to justify that amount of time. Most home builders work a couple hours in the evening and on Saturdays, but they spend a lot of that time fantasizing, daydreaming, drinking beer, talking to their friends. If I take a business-like approach to this, if I work all day, every day, keep my friends out, use as many off-the-shelf parts as I can, and build a really simple plane, I think instead of 1,200 hours, I can build it in a quarter of that, 300 hours. And I know from experience that in a month, I can work 500 hours, so 30 days should be no sweat.
But there's another reason I wanted to build a plane quickly. I had something to prove to myself. Like many of the guys here, I got interested in planes through my father when I was a kid helping him on the plane he was building. His enthusiasm infected me, though working with him was frustrating, as nothing ever seemed to get finished. So another reason I wanted to build a plane in 30 days was because I felt he would never have done it.
And for me, it's very important to me that I finish, not just this project, but other projects. And I think it's almost pathological. And I think that a lot of it has to do with him. It's me defining myself in opposition to my father. I have to be different than him. You know, one of the funny things is, when I was growing up, people would say, "You're just like your dad." And I would look at my dad. My dad weighed about 100 pounds more than I do. I would look at him and I'd say, "Well, thanks, you know, but I don't want to be a fat guy." And I think that a lot of sons, you know, either choose to emulate their fathers or to kind of rebel against them, take their own path. And I think I did that. I think I must have done that because I am on a different path, and it's very important that I finish things. It's very important that I be precise. He was not at all precise, and it's just the way I am.
Now here I am flying over England. Why? My passion for planes may have started on the ground in an Ohio garage, but I learned to fly in England as an air cadet when I went to an English high school. I loved flying so much that after college I even took a job working with planes, also in England, down there at the Shuttleworth Collection. I spent a year of my life in this place working as an apprentice, mending and rebuilding these antique planes. I learned how to carve propellers, how to fix old engines, and of course, how to make tea. I loved this place with its leisurely pace and the smell of freshly cut wood and old motor oil. It was the best job I ever had in my life, and I'd probably be here still, except back then they paid so little, I would have starved to death. These hangars contain some of the most historic planes in the world. I used to linger in here, planning my flying career and marveling at what the early pioneers had achieved. I used to envy the pioneers, starting out at the dawn of aviation when flying was a great adventure, dangerous and exhilarating. And of course, like most red-blooded young males, I had my flying fantasies, crisscrossing the skies in dogfights, my eyes peeled for the Hun in the sun. Once, for a few glorious days, I was one of those fighter pilots. I was hired on a movie about a squadron on the Western Front in World War I. For all too brief a time, I pitted my wits against the Red Baron. Baron shot me down, of course. But mainly at Shuttleworth, I helped rebuild planes. This was almost as enjoyable as flying. I still love the craftsmanship you need to build an old airplane. Remarkably, most of these 70-year-old planes are still flying. Should the plane I was going to build be a wooden biplane like one of these? Or should I use more modern technology? As I wandered round the collection, I discovered that a mechanic I trained with in the 70s was still working here. This is Andy Preslant. Imagine us 20 years ago, two nerdy kids passionately interested in anything that flew. Unlike me, Andy has spent his career mending planes. What would he think of my plan?
So we're going to build a plane in 30 days. What do you think?
Oh, ridiculous. unless it's one of your American kits that you're going to build.
Oh, no, we're going to design it and then build it.
You can design it, build it, and fly it in 30 days?
Yeah.
Well, have you got any, put a bet on it with you?
Sure.
A
fiver.
Yeah, a little fiver on it with you.
All right,
yeah.
Good.
What sort of thing is it going to be then?
Hell if I know.
Well, you send me the fiver.
Little did I realize that my challenge would end up costing me a lot more than 5 English pounds. It began a long way from Shuttleworth in Silicon Valley, California, where I live. And where better to build my 30-day plane than that place of so many Silicon Valley dreams, a garage.
Welcome to my garage. It's a mess, I know, but I have everything I need here to build an airplane. First of all, I've got lots of space because airplanes, especially airplanes in pieces, require a lot of area. Here's a wing from a project I built several years ago. And I've got tools, and for composite construction I have all the important ones. Squeegees and resin brushes, and most importantly, millions and millions of tongue depressors. Somewhere here I've got a girly calendar, and of course I got a fridge full of sodas for those long midnight hours. But most importantly, I got someone to help. I have my friend Ralph, who's been building planes since way back when. Ralph was in Paris when Lindbergh landed. Every builder should have a friend like Ralph to help. I'm really lucky. Well, Ralph, I'm going to build a plane in 30 days. You think I can do it?
No.
Okay, so now, got about 30 days here.
Ralph's 84 years old and has worked as an airplane mechanic all his life.
You know, there's some
Maybe I should have listened to his advice.
Percentage of the
I met him 10 years ago at the Palo Alto airport where he kept a plane he'd built himself. It was so beautiful I persuaded him to help me build one of my planes.
It's a very simple structure.
Ralph and I dream the same dreams,
that I can allot myself.
and he's the best metal worker I know.
So basically, if the plane's not on its gear in 15 days, you know, I'm in trouble. I mean, obviously, it's an insane schedule, but...
Well, I just don't know what to say. It's just out of my sphere of comprehension.
Well, okay, well...
I told myself Ralph would come round. In the meantime, I set off in a hired truck to buy tools. While I was gone, the crew questioned my girlfriend, Katie. I knew she was doubtful, but with me gone, well, I guess she felt she didn't have to worry about my feelings.
Do you think you're going to get in Bob's plane?
Yeah, I do. I actually think I'll get in it. Whether or not I'll go up in the air is another matter.
But why would you trust him to build it?
Who said I trusted him to build a plane?
If you don't trust him, who does?
Well, I don't. You know, it's like I've never heard of anybody building an airplane this fast. Of course, I don't know that much about it, but I just can't imagine doing anything so quickly. But you know, on the other hand, there's a lot of things that Bob said that he would do that that I never thought he would do that he's done. But we'll see. You know, maybe he'll pull this off. Maybe he'll pull this one off too. I'm going to be really, really, really nervous watching him take off in that plane. I can tell you that. Really scared. I hope he has good insurance. That's all I can say.
You know, this is such a boy thing. In my experience, it has no attraction whatsoever for women. I'm not just saying that women aren't interested in doing it, because there are the occasional woman who is interested in building her own airplane. But what I am saying is, if you expect to build an airplane and have women be attracted to you because you're in the process of building an airplane, guess what? It's not going to happen. You know, this is not a way to attract chicks. It doesn't work. You don't have any money. Your fingernails are dirty all the time. You don't have any time because when you're not working, you're building. And, you know, I think that they're attracted to the guy who just goes out and buys one. You know, build it? Build it? No, I'm sorry. It's just death to your love life.
Well, romance would just have to wait a while. What I needed now was some can-do spirit from a professional. So I dropped in on Peter Garrison. He's been writing about planes for 30 years and building his own for almost as long. He has a refreshingly no-nonsense attitude to why planes look the way they do.
Well, it turned out that if you made them look like birds, they wouldn't fly. And so I guess it's been an evolutionary process that the people who designed them looking other ways ended up dying more frequently than the ones who designed them looking this way. And so in the end, sort of by default, the conventional arrangement became the conventional arrangement. People have an exaggerated sense of how precise an airplane has to be. They have these notions that if it's a little out of balance, it'll crash, and if it's not true at all. It can be, I mean, look at the airplanes that come back from, in World War II, you see all these pictures, you know, airplanes with whole pieces of them are shot off and stuff is sticking out all over the place, it's all beat to hell, and it still comes back. Because it's possible to produce lift and overcome drag with pretty crude stuff. So, you know, you don't have to have anything that's perfect at all in order to fly.
You mean this isn't rocket science?
This is not rocket science.
That's more like it. Now it was time to choose what sort of plane to build. What a choice of planes there are. They come in every shape and size. Visit any air show and you'll see what I mean.
You can build anything you like, even a replica World War I fighter plane, though today, to save money, we make them just a little smaller. I have no idea what this airplane is, but it is kind of cute. This is a design from Belgium called the Tipsy Nipper. The best thing about it is the name. This is a Volksplane, a minimal airplane with a Volkswagen engine. Nobody builds it for its looks. Not everyone designs the airplanes they build. Many people build planes from plans that they buy from others. And some people take the high road and buy an airplane kit. This is the Europa, the most successful kit plane in the United Kingdom. And what a plane it is! It has the quality of a European sports car. To build this would take about 1,200 man-hours, maybe a bit more, and cost about £30,000.
Planes are different, usually because they were designed to do different things. But however they look, all planes have some things in common.
Time for the Cringely Crash Course in Wait a minute. Crash Course may not be the best name for it. How about the Cringely Basic Course in Aeronautics? And today we're talking about wings. Here's an airplane. It has wings. Wings create lift. Wings are amazing things. I mean, this plane weighs about 900 pounds, and somehow these wings lift it through the air. How do they do that? Well, they do that. I have here a cross-section of the wing. This is a rib from inside the wing. And we can look at the wing and see that the undersurface is flat and the top surface is curved. Well, as the air goes over the wing, the airplane's going through the air, it goes straight underneath, but over the top it's forced to curve, and that curve causes an increase in speed, which is accompanied by a decrease in pressure. So we have high pressure underneath, low pressure on top, and the difference between those pressures is lift. The longer the wings, the more lift they provide. That's why a glider has such long wings, so it can stay aloft in the slightest current of air. This plane is called Voyager. It was built to fly around the world without refueling. So its designer, Burt Rutan, gave it a low-powered engine that used hardly any gas and made the wings long and thin. So long and thin they didn't stay rigid, but almost flat. There's a second source of lift for an airplane wing, and I can best demonstrate that by putting my arm out the car window here, like I did when I was a kid. By raising the front of my hand or lowering the back, I increase what we aeronautical experts call the angle of attack. And the force of the air pushing against the bottom of my hand tends to raise my arm. That's lift. And what makes this happen in an airplane, of course, is something pulling the wing through the air. And that's usually an engine.
If you have enough engine, you hardly need any wings. No plane shows this better than the GB. It's all engine. Way back in 1932, this strange-looking plane won the world speed record at over 300 miles an hour. The pilot who broke the record, the legendary Jimmy Doolittle, refused to fly it after that. He said it was too dangerous. So a big engine with short wings goes fast for a short distance. A small engine with long wings flies slowly for long distance. I want something in between. I decided on a conventional wing, not too long or too short, and a conventional engine. But what kind of conventional engine? Airplane engines aren't like car engines. They run at almost full throttle all the time. Car engines only occasionally use full throttle.
Those here at Cranfield may be...
Many airplane engines haven't changed much since the 1920s. So though they are reliable, they're not very efficient mechanically speaking. Nowadays, many home builders use car engines. They have computers to control their fuel and ignition systems, which makes them very efficient, and these days, equally reliable. They're also 10 times cheaper, because millions more of them are manufactured. Japanese Subarus like this are a popular choice.
And it was chosen.
The next question was where to put the engine. Most engines are in the front. But you can have them at the back, too. Pushers, as they are called, give the pilot more legroom and visibility, but I find them unpleasant to fly. I wanted a combination of puller and pusher. It has been done before, but for very different reasons.
This is a P-39 fighter, Bell P-39 fighter from World War II, and it has a very unusual configuration. The engine is behind the cockpit, but the propellers in front has a long drive shaft that connects the two. And here's how it works. We have the big Allison V12 engine, this long drive shaft with a center-mounted support bearing, and the gearbox in the front gearing the engine down to run the propeller. But here's the important part. This cannon, and those you can see the cannon shells, this cannon fires through the propeller hub, and that was integral to the design. The idea was what you see is what you shot. And the interesting thing about the drive shaft is that it tended to vibrate at low speeds, and so you'd have this thing literally going between your legs, sort of vibrating. And we'll use a similar system without the cannon on our design, I think, though our shaft will be quite a bit shorter. We have shaft envy.
Last but not least, what do I make the plane out of? Wood's nice, but it's terribly fiddly. To get enough strength, you need hundreds of reinforcing pieces, which take forever to cut out and glue. Metal or aluminum looks great, but I found riveting, well, not all that riveting. That leaves the stuff these planes are made of, so-called composites. The best known is fiberglass. Most of us come across fiberglass when fixing the bodywork in our cars. But in 1975, that master of plane innovation, Burt Rutan, used it to build a range of oddly shaped airplanes like these. The great advantage of fiberglass is that you can make complicated curving shapes quickly.
And this, no, it's not a urine sample, it's resin that's used to make the fiberglass. You add this with a hardener, the cloth, you can create any shape you like, and it's hard, as you can see.
Burt Rutan's planes look just as peculiar as ever. This is the Boomerang, a plane where one wing is longer than the other. Sometimes I think Bert wants to be different just for the hell of it. Who else would be interviewed with a parrot on his shoulder?
Well, probably the best way is to grow an airplane. I mean, this airplane here was made with unskilled labor. Where's your Starship, huh?
Bert eventually gave my project some thought and even seemed to think I might succeed. He gave me some very useful advice.
You ought to count that the structure itself is no more than a quarter of that work. When I say structure, I'm talking about the basic composite airframe structure that makes up the airplane's wings, fuselage, tail, without the things that are attached to it.
So we have
like flight controls and so on. So really, you shouldn't spend more than a week doing basic structure.
Yeah.
And that's certainly possible if that's your goal.
Meet the ultimate home-built aircraft, the Nemesis. It's a racing plane and is made entirely of carbon fiber, which is like fiberglass, only it's stronger and a lot more expensive. Nemesis top speed is a staggering 310 miles an hour. Pretty impressive for a plane made in a garage. John Sharp had a radical suggestion for using composite materials for my wonder plane.
Now, if you were trying to build a plane, not necessarily this plane, but a plane in 30 days, how would you go about it? What sort of design decisions would you make?
Well, I think generally I'd kind of take the overall philosophy of what can I do to make a quick shape. And my answer to you to that is to buy a big chunks of foam, sand them to the shape that you want, and then cover them with fiberglass or carbon fiber and epoxy. Presto, your part is done. Composites, I think, is the way to go for your design. It's really light, and mainly it allows you to make your parts really fast, and that's the name of your game here.
Okay, I'm so excited. We're just back from Palmdale, and I've been thinking about how I'm going to design and build this airplane. 30 days is not much time. 30 days is no time at all, so we have to find ways of building it that are very quick, that can best use the talents of the people available, and frankly, maybe are a little different. Perhaps we're taking some risks here, but I'm a risk-taking kind of guy. So this is what I envision doing right now. The airplane, I always start at the front. The airplane, I think, is going to look something like this. I envision having a low wing, an undercarriage back here, tricycle undercarriage here, windows sort of like this, flying tail, stabilator. The engine, I want to put the engine, it'll be a Subaru engine, I want to put it right here. It's a 4-cylinder engine, we'll put it right there. Put it actually behind the seats. This is the seat, and this is me, because of course I'm the pilot. Put it behind the seat. There's a big welded steel structure here that both holds the engine and connects to the undercarriage, and even extends forward and attaches to this nose wheel here.
Full of high hopes, Ralph and I visited Steve Weiss, a car mechanic in Palo Alto.
Hey, Steve. Look who's here. You remember this guy? Remember that flight down to Bakersfield?
Steve's an adventurous mechanic. I wanted to try out on him my idea of having an engine behind me with a long drive shaft to the propeller in front. His reaction was not what I expected. It was the first cloud in my sunny sky, a sign of the storm to come.
It's tricky to balance. You run into harmonics, and when you run a reduction gear in a prop, just be ready, you want to do it quick. But you're taking on a problem that took Porsche a year to solve.
You can balance it on a balancing arbor, and it's absolutely perfect, but you put it on the engine, and immediately it hooks up with something vibrating in the engine. I guess you call that a harmonic, and the next thing you know, the instruments are barely legible.
The automotive engine part's easy. The drive shaft part's tricky.
Oh.
It's an interesting idea.
I tend to blank out criticism, and that's what I did with Steve's reaction. In fact, I was still pleased with my ideas, so I took them to Peter Garrison for his approval. And what did I get? Well, not approval, that's for sure.
Pretty surprising.
Yeah. We broke one of the rules. We put the engine in the back, or in the middle, like a P-39. That way we can rip the engine right out of a Subaru and drop it in a great big hole in the airplane.
Are you familiar with the torsional resonance issues? All right, just checking.
It is a tricycle undercarriage. It's retractable.
I see that it's retractable.
And because it really would, it takes less time to make it retractable than it takes it to build the fairings to go over a fixed gear. And the key structural element is this big weldment in the middle that acts as the thing that keeps the engine from coming through your back in a crash. It also ties in the wing attach points. The wings are foldable.
Well, no one could accuse you of insufficient ambition. There's nothing inherently undoable about any of this. It's just that, boy, you have bitten off more than I would have wanted to chew in 30 days. Geez, well, I'd like to be a fly on the wall when this one is being done. Well, this is quite amazing. I mean, I must say that, except that you appear sane and you come in the company of other people who I assume would vouch for your sanity, I would just figure you were a nut. Because, I would say that to try to do this in 30 days, or at all, I mean, to do it at all, you'd be a nut, but I'm a nut too. I mean, that kind of a nut. A lot of people are. But to try to do something of this scale, I mean, you really have got a complicated thing here. And I just can't imagine how this could be done in that little time.
I invented this yesterday.
Yeah, that's great, boy. If the entire world could move along at this clip, why, we could be in the 21st century in a week.
So we'll see.
That was as clear a message as you can get other than a horse's head in your bed. But by now my pride was at stake. I was determined to prove my doubters wrong. I was ready to start. I had just one more visit to make.
We've attended lots of air shows, talked to designers, looked at hundreds of home builds. I've even sketched out a few designs of my own on table napkins. But now it's time to put meat on the bone. We need detailed plans. We need blueprints that I can follow during construction. And to help me with that, I'm turning to my friend Martin here, who designs airplanes.
The clock was ticking. Time to turn my general ideas into precise plans, blueprints for building my 30-day wonder plane. That's what Martin would do. He would make the drawings which showed the exact dimensions of every part of my plane and how they fitted together. All the nitty-gritty stuff that would transform my ideas into a practical reality. At least that was the plan.
Now the engine's going to be in the front, like we said. It's not going to be in the back, it's going to be up in front of the airplane. And we'll draw the engine in here.
But Martin is a man of strong opinions. Before I could present him with my sketches, he started designing my plane from scratch. Already shell-shocked from Peter Garrison's reaction, I let him get on with it. Besides, how do you argue with a guy who can design an airplane while you wait?
And still lets the pilot look over it. Okay, and that'll come down like this. It'll come down, and we've got to be able to reach the instrument panel from where the pilot sits. So we'll bring this line back, and we'll basically bring the instrument panel within reach of the pilot. Okay, that's going to be the instrument panel.
Martin makes plane designing look very simple. As Peter Garrison said, almost anything will fly, and in the end it comes down to the designer's tastes. Having designed dozens of planes, Martin knows all the options and how to decide among them.
Let's bring the fuselage back to here, to this point here, just for the heck of it.
Okay. Is that the way designs are done, just for the heck of it? You say, ah, well...
Yeah, you have to have some artistic license here.
Yeah, of course.
Some artistic license, and we see what it looks like. If it doesn't look like, good, We've got this eraser.
That's
We just
right.
erase it.
Yeah.
Okay, now then, what we need is, we still need the landing gears. Let's put the wheel up here, the nose wheel.
None of my ideas got in. No engine behind the pilot, no steel reinforcing ring, no retractable landing gear. Still, the plane did look like the one I wanted, and with only 30 days, I felt I just had to accept Martin's design. After all, he was the expert, wasn't he? And that made me, what?
There. Anyway, that's what our airplane is starting to look like, is like this. Since we've designed a lot of these airplanes, it's very conventional, and it went very quick. You know, it took, what, about 2.5 hours?
About 2.5 hours to get to this point where,
Yes.
where we have something that looks nice, and we're pretty sure it's not going to fall out of the sky.
Right.
At least aerodynamically.
A nice plane, but pretty different from the one I drew. I didn't argue, but before I bowed to the inevitable, I made one more attempt at getting Martin to accept my original design. I faxed Martin a detailed justification for my ideas, particularly why I wanted the engine in the middle of the plane. It meant we could move the wing back behind the pilot, giving him an unrestricted view of the ground below. It was safer and more fun. Surely he had to buy the idea.
Okay, now we'll call Martin.
Yeah, hi.
How are you?
Oh, pretty good. Got your letters and stuff.
Yeah?
You know, I saw them, but a lot of them are ideas. You've got a lot of bad ideas. I don't know how you come up with these ideas, but most of them are bad, I hate to tell you.
Well, you know, it's good to hear that, because I don't want to do anything that's bad.
No, right. You know, you're thinking, which is good, and you're trying to do something different.
Uh-huh.
But you know, Bob, I'll tell you honestly,
Yeah?
difficult, very difficult to do something different.
Okay, forget I thought of it.
Great, Bob. I've got your phone number here, so I can get a hold of you if I have any questions.
Yeah, please call me. Okay.
Great, thanks.
Thanks a lot.
I know.
I feel mugged. None of my ideas are any good. You know, I'm not sure I believe that. I think some of my ideas are fine. Anyway, but if we want to get this thing done on schedule, I guess we'll have to come up with a conservative design. Okay. I get to go now to my psychotherapist. How did it go with the therapist? Well, Heather says that this airplane building is very good for me because I'm working out my therapy actually in the sessions. She says it's like she doesn't even have to be there. I'm in conflict with Martin Holman, who of course represents, I guess, my judgmental mother, and there's the very question about why I set myself this task of doing this near impossible thing in 30 days. And she called it narcissistic, and I thought that was very interesting to see that, you know, to not only set this task, but of course to have a camera present for the whole darn thing. And you know, she's got a point. I guess I'm probably more screwed up than I even thought I was. Given that I've been in therapy now for, what, 13 years, I probably have another 13 to go.
Tomorrow I would start building my 30-day plane in front of a TV camera. There would be no escape from this crazy project. Is it crazy? I began to feel a little nervous.
This is the start of day one. To say that I am filled with trepidation would be understatement. I mean, you know, what we're proposing to do here is something that suddenly I've realized that maybe no one's done. That's not quite true. There is the odd airplane that is claimed to have been built in 30 days. There's a race plane from the 30s called the Laird Super Solution, a great big plane that was built in 30 days. Some very complex planes have been built in not much more than 30 days. But to say that, you know, a couple of guys, one old and one getting old, can do this in 30 days is a challenge. And I peculiarly feel up to it. But
the overhead of sort of having a structural engineer I'm fighting with, and also having to acquire all the parts in the world and make it happen is a bit intimidating. So here I am at the start of day one, and we have 30 more of these to go, and then we'll fly. At least I hope so.
The first thing I did was spend money. My self-imposed budget for the plane was $15,000.
Okay.
I phoned the Aircraft Spruce and Specialty Company and ordered flight instruments and 2 huge rolls of fiberglass cloth. $2,000 gone already. There would be no wood in the plane. I needed it to build tables and molds to shape fiberglass. I drove to Martin Holman's office. He had drawn the overall shape of my plane with impressive speed, but before I could build anything, I needed blueprints with precise dimensions. I figured an unexpected visit would emphasize the need for urgency. I anticipated a fight, but I didn't care. I was eager to get started, and I felt really good.
This hobby has such an attraction for me, and it's very difficult to explain. It's something that I find just so incredibly satisfying about it. Having created something, I mean, even now I'm in this incredible compromise situation with Martin Holman. It's not the plane I wanted to build, but it's the plane that I can build in the amount of time I've got. And when it's done, I'm going to be incredibly proud of it. I'm going to forget the problems, I'm going to forget the arguments, I'm going to forget how hard it was to build. I mean, you know, and I'll just say, whoa, there's my airplane. And I've said it before, several times before, and I keep coming back to do it because it's so uniquely satisfying. And when you fly in something that is your own,
I arrived at Martin Holman's office worried that my drawings weren't coming quickly enough. I still didn't think he understood the urgency. Every day counts.
Now, I need to be building something.
But the first thing I need to do is finish this drawing that we started the other day.
Yes.
I need to finish that drawing up. Won't take long to do that.
Okay. Now, when then can I have those cross sections?
As soon as I can plot them out, it might take it, you know, by the end of this week maybe.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
If I get to work on this thing tomorrow, you know, and really work on it, then I could have it done, you know, probably by this weekend, and then I could, you know, Federal Express them to you.
Okay. Okay, that sounds.
Martin was beginning to take my schedule seriously.
Normally, I don't have a hard time keeping up with the builders, but you know, with your ambition, I really got to work on this quick.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah,
I'm going to surprise you.
Yeah. Well, this will be fun.
Yeah. Good.
This going to be a fun project.
Great. Great.
Yeah.
The nice thing is he's starting to get excited about it. So, you know, that means we have a better chance of finishing on time.
For most of day 2, I concentrated on finding an engine, and my search took me to some pretty strange places. I know it seems a bit spooky to be getting your engine from a graveyard like this, but my mother used to tell me you shouldn't judge by appearances, and these corpses conceal some pretty neat engines, like this 130 horsepower Subaru. It may not look airworthy, but the price is right.
Well, the car looks right, but, you know, the important thing is, look, it wasn't a front-end collision. Didn't get the engine smashed back into it. There's no physical damage to the engine. The car just got rolled over. That's perfect. This is good.
There was my engine, a bargain at $800. The engine needed checking out and reconditioning, so I took it over to Steve Weiss's shop. He'd convert the engine for flight while I was building the rest of the plane. But was the Subaru the best choice? I needed reassurance. So just for the heck of it, I called a couple of guys who know a lot about engines.
Hi, this is Bob from Silicon Valley.
Bob from Silicon Valley.
That's right.
The whole valley.
Yeah, I own only a very small piece of it, though.
Yeah, well, we understand. About 5,000 square feet. Yeah, so what's up?
Well, I'm converting this engine and putting it in a small airplane that I'm designing and building. But the part I'm really interested in is I got this engine from a wrecking yard.
And you're going to fly in the air with this thing?
Yeah. I took it out of the car. It's a 94. It's a low mileage. The engine looks good, but the car was in a rollover.
Yeah, they all were.
Yeah. Well, it's better than having the front engine.
Yeah, no, every car that's in a junkyard was in a rollover or a rear-end collision.
No, I took it out of the car.
Yeah, you saw it roll over. That's good, yeah. Yeah.
And, I want to make sure that I've chosen the right engine.
Wait a minute, before we go any further here.
Uh-huh.
This guy sounds like he's nuts and he's going to really do this. And I would hate to have his lawyer have a copy of this phone call. Because when he does it, he's gonna blame us.
Well, we haven't endorsed anything. We're just saying, I
don't even want to talk to him.
We're answering that right now. Sure,
right.
Bob, go on.
Yeah, go ahead. This is a great idea, Bob.
Well,
we know nothing about the topic, but we're more than happy to discuss it. But just don't sue us.
Okay. I've got this engine. Now, what do I do with it?
Woo! Well, you know the part that sticks out the front?
Yeah.
Put a propeller on it.
Okay.
Call us back when you get that part done.
While Tom and Ray Magliozzi of Car Talk were having fun at my expense, I got on with building one of the most important things every plane builder needs, a table.
This is the table. It's almost done. That we're going to build the fixtures for the wing skins, upper and lower wing skins, and also the molds for both parts of the fuselage. It's vitally important that this table be absolutely flat, because if it's not absolutely level, the parts we build on it will not be absolutely straight, and your airplane flies in circles. And frankly, this is a long and tedious process that we'll just show a little bit of, because this is going to take a couple hours. So, in order to do this, we have this piece of plastic tubing. The technique here is to use this as a water level. And we put colored water in the tubes and then compare it with the other end and shim the table up to raise the low end to match the high end. That's how we do it. Now, a lot of people have different ways of producing their colored water. I prefer a Louis Martini Merlot, which I think is an excellent way to spend 2 hours leveling your table on which you're going to build your wing. So, now, an important thing to remember in the construction of composite aircraft is that syringes are used a great deal. They're used in some places for resin. They're used a lot for various catalysts and hardeners. The trick is, do not use an old syringe for your wine, especially if you're drinking from the same container. This is going to take quite a few squirts. You can also, in moments of boredom, you can actually squirt it into your mouth. You can see it going through the tube. That's wonderful. You can see it's approximately an inch from the bottom surface here to the top of the liquid. And on this end, we can see that it's almost about 7/8 of an inch below that surface. So there's an inch and 7/8 difference in the levels of these 2 points, which means that end has to be shimmed up a lot.
Plane building is like pregnancy, mood swings. That morning, I was happy and confident. By the time I'd finished my table, Well, my TV producers had another bright idea. Record my thoughts every night. They called it my confessional.
Okay, end of day 3. End of day 3. I think we're now 5 days behind schedule. I'd say 5 days on the end of day 3. Slowly, we're ending up with a design that bears no resemblance to anything I ever imagined building, except that it will be done in 30 days. And maybe that's enough. Maybe just achieving that is enough. Certainly, it'll fly safely, and maybe it'll be a lot of fun. I just wish it looked more like what I've been drawing on napkins for 5 years. And tomorrow I start building the jig for the wing, and that'll give me a real sense of accomplishment. And by the end of the weekend, we may well have built some major parts for the wings.
I was fooling myself. Already my last flight round San Francisco was a fading memory. I didn't realize it at the time, but by day 3, the fun part of my challenge was almost over. Ahead lay an experience I could never have dreamed of in my worst nightmare.
Looks like there may be turbulence ahead, so don't go away. We'll return with the second part of Plane Crazy.
WTTW offers a unique world of programming that is not available anywhere else. The support we receive from viewers is vital in order for us to maintain a program schedule of the quality and diversity that you've come to expect from WTTW. If you've never given to Channel 11 before, here's a quick and convenient way to do so. By calling 1-900-288-1111, you can give a $15 gift to Channel 11 that will help pay the cost of the programs that you enjoy. When you make the call, please listen to the brief recording. When you do, $15 will be automatically charged to your phone bill. The support and help of viewers like you enables us to broadcast an array of television programs that not only entertain, but also educate, enlighten, and inspire. Thank you.
Next on Mystery, Poirot receives an early Christmas present.
Don't you believe in forgiving your enemies?
If I had an enemy, I would cut his throat.
My family hate me, you know.
It is not hard to see why, Monsieur.
Why did my father-in-law ask you to ghost him?
He told me that his life was in danger. But is it not a possibility that Simeon Lee did in fact commit a suicide, but wanted it to look like murder?
Hercule Poirot's Christmas on Mystery.
It's Christmas in July, tomorrow night at 8.
Next time on United Tastes of America, I shall be exploring two of America's most popular cuisines. First, I will travel to New Mexico to cook food that is hot and tasty in the homes of people who really know about the Southwestern cuisine. Later, I will be going west to San Francisco to discover the flavors of Chinatown with its wonderful restaurants where I can sample some dim sum.
Southwestern and Chinese, Friday at 9. On the 11 Watch, the Senate sponsor of the Internal Revenue Service reform says President Clinton's signing of the measure into law brings a new era for the tax agency. Senate Finance Committee Chairman William Roth, who was at today's White House signing, says the changes are the broadest ever for the IRS. Chicago's weather tonight mostly cloudy, a low in the mid-60s. Thursday partly cloudy, less humid, and a high near 80. Thursday night and Friday, cloudy, low in the upper 50s, high upper 70s.
The captain requests that you please fasten your seatbelts as we now return with the second part of Plane Crazy.
My father, years ago in Ohio, in our garage, introduced me to building airplanes, but it was in England where I first learned to fly. As a high school teenager, I took a cadet course and discovered gliding, and I've been in love with flying ever since.
Give me a monoplane, biplane, powerplane, or glider. I love them all. But to build a plane in only 30 days, we need to make some key choices. Our first decision was to make it of composite materials rather than wood or aluminum. Martin's own plane, the Stallion, is built of this stuff, and it's a favorite material for the airplane home builder. The composite we're using is fiberglass. It's light and strong, and you can easily make complex shapes with it. But there is a snag. Just like my mother's world-famous Jell-O salad, you need a mold to shape your fiberglass. So I spent the first few days of the project sawing wood and making molds for my wings.
Dusty business.
It's a crucial job, but I'd rather be making wings than molds. Amazing stuff, fiberglass. You buy it in huge rolls like curtain material, but then see what you can turn it into.
The thing about fiberglass composites is the way to make it strong and light is by creating a sandwich structure. These are the parts we got to work with in this little cookery sample. We're going to do a sort of a Delia Smith, Julia Child demonstration. We have 2 bits of fiberglass cloth. You can see there's certainly no strength there. And this is the polyurethane foam that goes in the middle. You can see it's hardly very strong either. It's easy to break. It's a little bit flexible. And this is the way we're going to set it up. In the sandwich structure, we put a piece of glass with this resin, and then a piece of the foam, which we glue down there with the resin, put some more resin on top of it, then another piece of glass on top, and we end up with a material that's almost as strong as a solid piece of glass and resin, but much, much lighter. So here's the miracle of television here. I wish we could do this for the whole airplane, but we can pop this in the microwave for about 30 seconds, and then we'll see how stiff it gets. Of course, it would require a much larger microwave to contain the entire airplane. So here we go. And there's the bit we made. It's crackling like a piece of fried fish. Here's one in true cooking show fashion, one I did a little bit earlier. And we can see that suddenly it's got very stiff. I can't bend it at all. And it's quite hard. Not beautiful, but you could make an airplane of it. The other.
Time to get building. At last, some plans from Martin arrived.
This is the airplane as he envisions it. You know, I'm so caught up in the business of building this, and damn it, I'm going to build it, that at this point I'm not sure I care how it looks, as long as in another, whatever, 23 days I fly it. So I'm just so relieved to have these drawings and to have something that I can really get working on and just fly. In the next couple of days, we're going to see just dramatic progress. And so when it's in the...
As I got ready my foam and fiberglass to build a wing, I received my first visit from my girlfriend Katie and her cousin Thatcher. Katie hates airplanes of any kind. That included the one I was about to build, but I was hoping to win her over.
Gosh, it looks like a real plane.
Yeah, surprising, isn't it? I think so.
It's great. This is interesting.
Yeah. Does it scare you a little less?
No.
Scares me more.
Yeah.
Why does it scare you more?
What,
Icarus.
you know, every single person I've talked to is scared for you. I'm not the only one. I don't know. It's just, you know, it's a big feat. But you'll be fine. You know.
I worked all that day on the wings, trying to cut and shape the foam part of the fiberglass sandwich. It went much slower than expected. To make matters worse, Steve Segala and John Gow, the TV producers in charge of the series, were coming by to see how their budget was being spent. They'd need convincing that the project was on track. It wasn't.
One thing about them is they really don't know what the heck they're looking at. So, engineers throughout time have relied on the fact that their bosses do not know what they're looking at. So, we're behind schedule. I have to admit that. But that's all I'm going to admit. So. Hey, come on in. Ed Network was paying for all of this.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yeah, we're in the high rent district.
So,
This is what? Where they play the
what day are we?
Day 9.
And this is all you've done?
I know. And we're in trouble.
Oh.
Which bit is a bit of the plane?
This foam is a bit of the. Oh, I broke it. Now we're in trouble.
We're clearly behind schedule.
But not as much as you guess.
Really? We can catch up, can we?
Oh, I think so. I'm not giving up.
You sound so confident.
Well, you know, the thing about it is that the wing is what holds the damn airplane up. So it's got a big beam in it that we have to calculate all the stresses in, and we're doing finite element analysis of this structure.
I did my best to blind them with science.
More computer power than sent man to the moon is being applied to this project.
So does it get quicker or does it get slower?
Well, I would think that in the next several days you'll see dramatic evidence of construction.
Haven't had that before.
Yes.
I knew they didn't believe me, but being English, they didn't say anything. Feeling the pressure, I started rushing things and soon paid the price. Air bubbles formed between the foam and the fiberglass, and believe me, bubbles are bad. They weaken the material and they sure don't look good.
This is too frenzied. I'm trying to please John Gow. I mean, he said he wanted glass tonight. And he's off sleeping somewhere. I mean, it's not his fault. He didn't know what he was asking for. I should have known better.
I decided there weren't enough bubbles to worry about. Besides, this was the inside of the wing. No one would see them. Bubbles were soon the least of my problems.
This is the wing drawing, and this is the spar, the box part in here.
I spent the morning of day 10 trying to understand Martin Holman's drawing. He had designed a spar. That's the beam that runs along the length of the wing and connects it to the fuselage. Sounds simple, but it isn't.
So I called Martin up, and I asked him how to build the thing. And he said, well, I wouldn't design it if I didn't think it could be built. And I said, well, great, Martin, but how do you build it? And he said, it's all in my book. Read my book. So I had to run home and find his book, which I'm now madly paging through, trying to find the paragraph or two where he describes how to build this spar.
The Holman plan called for a wing spar made from carbon fiber. It's 8 times stronger than glass fiber, but I couldn't figure out where it should go and how many layers were needed.
How do we do that? Okay, I know how to do it.
Once I'd figured out what to do, I got out the carbon fiber.
Here we have it, 500 feet of this stuff. Doesn't look like much, but it's about, let's say $100 a pound, because there's about 5 pounds of it here. So that is by far the most expensive, but it allows us to make a very strong, very stiff beam that goes down the center of each wing and sort of keeps our wings from falling off.
11 days in, the sunny world outside my garage was becoming a distant memory. Carbon fiber is extraordinary stuff. You can cut it with scissors like cloth. But once soaked in resin and allowed to dry, it solidifies into a material that's as light as cardboard and twice as strong as steel. That's when it's finished, but it's a pain to work with. There was a further problem. Martin's design was complicated. I really needed something simpler for my 30-day schedule, but it was too late to complain or change plans now. My dad taught me to measure twice and cut once. In this case, it's measure 136 times and cut 68. Of day 11. My wing spar was nearly done. Time now for my regular torture, the video confessional demanded by my TV bosses. I think I'm right now about 5 days behind. At this rate, it'll take me 2 months to build my 30-day airplane. Or maybe I'm just a steady 5 days behind now. That's what I hope. I keep telling myself what fun it's going to be to fly this little plane. And that's what keeps me going. Oh, there's my drawings. Martin Holman had sent some more drawings. These were for the plane's fuselage.
You can sort of take a look through and see what we have. These are the basic fuselage contours. It's actually quite streamlined, isn't it? The side view, and this is a view from the top.
Very pretty, but very time-consuming. To build a complex curving shape like this, I would need to make a mold. That meant cutting out 54 different cardboard templates and then 54 pieces of wood. Usually Martin's planes need about a dozen templates, and here he's quadrupling the number. Is this guy trying to kill me?
Co-owner of this boat.
See what I'm doing?
Oh!
Every piece has a different shape.
So you have to cut a new one of these each time?
What I do is I take scissors and I cut down to the next line.
Okay.
Now I did something I'd never done before. I let Katie help me. Sure, I needed help, but I hate asking for it. Now my temper was fraying, and as I feared, our working relationship did not get off to a good start.
I find that when I make suggestions that, or ask questions, particularly if it's about something I know nothing about, Bob will kind of occasionally take it as an insult.
I hear these questions as, have you ever thought of using your neurons? You know, that's it. In the occasional moment of sanity you might have, is there some reason why you're building this plane? So that's how I tend to hear these things.
Okay, what am I going to do now?
Well, you can cut it down to this line. Can you see it inside there? It's that line, not that one, that one. Ruin it and you're dead.
May I cut this line right here to get in?
Yes. The part you're cutting off we could throw away, so.
Well, I understand that, but you know, frankly, I'm so nervous now about cutting this thing like I used to do in grade school. Oh no!
Katie's workmanship was fine, but I just couldn't trust her. It wasn't her fault. I'm not the trusting type.
I mean, if you ask people to do things, they do them wrong. I don't want free will. I don't want someone to interpret my instructions. I want them to do what I say. You know, go here, get this, bring it back. Simple as that. And they say, oh, I thought green would be better. I didn't want green, I wanted red. So it's often a lot easier for me to just do it myself.
Isn't that kind of a little bit arrogant?
Arrogant?
Mm-hmm.
If I wanted red, I'm paying for it. I'm specifying it. What, I should be grateful for someone for saying that they're going to do me a favor and then not doing it? No. But that's the way they see it. You know, you say, well, I really wish you'd gotten the red. Oh, the green's much better.
Well, but you know, but people aren't computers or robots. I mean, that's what you get. It's thinking, breathing, feeling beings.
Yeah, that's the whole problem.
Day 15. Halfway through, and what am I doing? Still making a mold for the fuselage. All 54 pieces of it. By now I should have been halfway up the mountain. In reality, I was beginning my descent into hell. My early optimism was coming back to haunt me. What did the Greeks say about pride and retribution?
I'm already perfectly willing to concede that very unlikely that we'll be in the air 15 days from now. I certainly expect to be able to. I don't know how much behind I am, but I know that I'm catching up already.
Then the first of several body blows came in the innocent form of a FedEx package. Martin had sent some new plans for parts I had already made.
I love note.
He had redesigned the fuselage. Apparently, he hadn't allowed enough room for the wings.
All the lower fuselage station contours had to be changed. See enclosed drawings. Oh my God, I hope all of them. God. Let's see what we have here. Okay.
I was beginning to wonder if he was on my side or not. We're halfway through the project and he's still changing the fuselage. I almost cried.
I gotta call him. It could be that at least half the work we've already done has to be thrown out. Hi, it's Martin Holman there.
Yeah, who's calling, please?
Yeah, this is Bob Cringely.
Just a moment.
Hi.
Hi, Martin.
Hi, how you doing, Bob?
I'm fine. I got your drawings.
That's good.
Yeah, what's changed on the bottom?
I had to lower the bottom around where the wings are.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't low enough.
Uh-huh.
The top I didn't touch.
Okay.
Okay. But the bottom I changed.
So how many stations are changed?
They're all changed.
They're all changed.
Yeah.
But the top half is the same.
I didn't touch the top half.
Okay, then I'll have to remake all those pieces.
Can you cut them? Can you just cut them out further?
Maybe. That's
out more material.
Yeah. I've already made them all. But yeah, I mean, it's good that we now have space for the wing.
Yeah.
All right then. Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, Martin.
Bye.
Bye. So, 27 pieces of plywood or particle board cut out wrong. But he's right. If it's just dropped down, I may be able to save them. So that's the thing to work on right now. Damn.
I desperately wanted to save the work I had done. But I couldn't find a way of salvaging what I'd already made. The new drawings were too different. I spent the next 2 days building the frame for the fuselage all over again. 1 step forward, 2 steps back. With the newly cut pieces of wood, Katie and I finally assembled the fuselage mold. Somewhere near the end of day 16, it was done. And you know what? It doesn't look bad. Day 17, and I needed to speed things up. I thought of a shortcut to build the fuselage. Remember my microwave demonstration, how you put foam in between layers of fiberglass cloth? Well, foam's tough to work with. I had a better idea.
Now I've come across this other material. This is balsa wood that has this mesh backing to it, and they're little pieces of balsa wood that are cut, as you can see, and it allows the wood to form not only the curve this way, but it also bends this way. So we can get not a perfect compound curve, but some semblance of a compound curve, more so than we could with the Clark foam.
I felt I had shifted up a gear. My balsa wood shortcut looked promising. For once, I even enjoyed laying on the fiberglass and then putting on that foul-smelling resin. Hey, in 12 hours, I would have half a fuselage. I would confound my doubters yet. Disaster. My balsa wood idea turned out a bummer. The resin just wouldn't stick to it. A whole day wasted.
This is not working. And rather than attempt to recover from a disaster, I'm just going to try to pretend like it never happened.
So I had to use strips of foam after all. Another 2 steps back. My dream was beginning to fray at the edges.
Well, it's a 3:45 in the morning on day 19, or is it the morning of day 20? The fuselage bottom is finally finished being all foamed in. One of the things I realized is that this business of building composite airplanes is kind of suckers you in. It looks so easy. Well, it doesn't quite work that way. Here we build this incredibly complex, compound curved fuselage. You know, it looks lovely. It will be beautiful. But there are, in this piece alone, more than 200 individually cut and fitted pieces of foam. It's crazy. It's just crazy. What I should have done is just make it really, really simple. Make it look like a box. And the result you'll have is a plane you can actually finish in 30 days. I mean, I've spent, God, close to a week just building this bottom of a fuselage. And it's lovely, but I can't afford this kind of time. The top had sure better go quicker.
Day 20. It's 7:30 a.m. and I've had 3 hours sleep. I'm driving the 20 miles into San Francisco. Nothing to do with airplanes, everything to do with earning money. I was to be interviewed on TV about something. I forget what. God, I was tired.
Stand by.
To fight off sleep, I made a checklist of things to do. Before I went back to the garage, I would visit my aircraft mechanic friend Ralph Korngold and get him building some of the plane's metal fittings. Ralph's a great mechanic. If I can describe a part, he can build it.
So what you would do is, this would be hollow here?
No, just only you can drill that far.
Ralph's first job was to build my instrument panel. I knew he would build it beautifully, even though he distrusts any technology designed after 1935.
Well, you know something? These are the instruments that Bob gave me, and he said, make a panel for him. But he didn't even tell me what they are, and I don't recognize them. In all the airplanes that I've ever dealt with, all the instruments were separate. But he assures me that by turning this little knob here and energize it, and then I guess it lights up like a Christmas tree. I don't know.
I don't blame Ralph for his caution when it comes to airplane instruments. He's had a few near misses in his long flying career. Just a year ago, he took a risk by flying into bad weather.
I could see the next ridge of hills was sticking up into the clouds, and so I couldn't get under it. So I made the decision, instead of, I looked back, and I could have turned back, and that would have been the thing to do. That's what my better judgment told me, to turn back. But I thought, oh, hell, I can make it. So let's go. So I pulled up into the overcast. Well, my instrument flying skills were sadly deteriorated, and going up through the overcast, I lost it. The first time in the 50 years that I've been flying that I actually lost the airplane completely, just lost control. I had no idea what was going on. The airplane could have been upside down, sideways, whatever. And you just can't tell. It's gotten away from you. So I fought it as best I could and finally broke out on top in a vertical bank, still climbing, but the wing's absolutely vertical, and I thought I was perfectly level. It's just amazing how if you don't have reference either to instruments or to the ground, or even if you have a couple of instruments and you're rusty and you can't stay ahead of the airplane, it just gets away, and that's it. So I lucked out. I lived through it. I should have been killed that day.
I hadn't thought much about safety while building this plane, but Katie certainly had.
Jumping out is what you do after everything else fails.
Well, at what point do you decide that?
After you tried everything else. Let's say I have a serious problem in the airplane, and I'm 1,500 feet over a highly populated area. What do I do?
Are you going to be a hero?
What do I do?
I don't know. What do you do? I mean, what are you talking about? Whether to decide whether or not you parachute?
Yeah.
So you're afraid that the plane will damage people, and so you'd rather just go down with the plane?
Well, you know, it's
I mean, I'm not sure what you're saying.
It's interesting that you put it like, go down with the plane.
Well, I don't know. I'm just trying to talk like worst case scenario here.
Katie, I'd rather save the plane, but I'd much more rather save myself. You're just going to have a little faith here.
Well, no, that's not what. But I am talking about saving
idiot.
yourself. I am talking about saving yourself.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about being trained on the parachutes, because I think that people should be prepared. As best as they can. You know, walk around in a state of denial about this.
You think I'm not prepared?
I think you are prepared. Yeah. Yeah.
So why are we having this argument?
It's not an argument, but I really think that it wouldn't hurt to know something about jumping out of an airplane.
All right. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll go to a parachuting place and I'll say to them, I'll say, look, I'm buying this safety parachute that I never intend to use. However, could you give me the instruction in its use and give me the ground school part?
Oh, that's great.
I'll do that. Okay?
That's great. Yeah. That makes me feel a lot better.
All right.
Okay. Good deal.
The most interesting thing today was a talk that we had about safety. If this plane doesn't work as it should, if I don't fly it as it should, when do I leave it? When do I say no? When do I stop? It's an interesting question, and a hard question to answer sometimes. And other times it's very clear. I can remember years ago, I was flying to see my parents, and I was flying in my Glass Air, which is a home built, and trying to get there for dinner. And we were flying into the airport where they lived, near where they lived, and the weather was getting bad. The ceiling kept getting lower and lower, the clouds kept getting lower and lower, and I kept ducking under them, doing what in America we call scud running, that is, flying between the clouds and the ground. And soon, my parents live in the Ozark Mountains in Arkansas, and so I was soon between the clouds and the tops of the mountains. They're not very high mountains, but flying along. And it kept getting closer and closer and closer, until finally, suddenly, the clouds and the mountains met. Now at that point, there was all just white around me, and I knew that beneath me, about 200 feet beneath me, were the hills. This was stupid. Really, really stupid for me to be there. I hope some statute of limitations has passed, because this was many, many years ago. So I'm in the clouds, flying along, 200 feet off the ground, no visibility, and next to me was a young woman, then my wife, and she went from being everything businesslike to everything unbusinesslike in a moment. And I had to turn the plane around to get back to where the weather was clear, and at the same time deal with her. There was a problem. We knew that there was another airport back about 2 minutes behind, and so it was pretty easy to get turned around very carefully, making sure not to lose any altitude, and get headed back the way I came. In a minute or so, I was out of the clouds and went to a nearby airport and landed. Called my parents. My father came over to pick us up. Well, we'd been only about 45 seconds away from crossing his airport. We'd been less than a minute from landing at my parents' field. And when my father came to pick me up, it took him 15 minutes to drive to pick me up. He said, "Why didn't you fly into Bentonville? That's the local airport." And I said, well, the clouds came down and the earth came up. And, you know, I did the smart thing. I got the heck out of there. And he said, "Oh, you could have made it." Oh, you could have made it. And I looked at my father with his blind eye and his bum leg and his broken head and his broken spirit, all from a plane crash 15 years before. And I thought, no, I couldn't. No, I couldn't do it. And I didn't. So when this plane flies, it'll be safe, or I won't fly it.
Day 20. Katie and I are laying in the fiberglass cloth, which will be the inside surface of the fuselage. This is one of the trickiest jobs in home building. You must lay it in with as few creases as possible.
Overlaps or like bubbles or...
You then brush in the resin. This sticks the cloth to the foam and makes it rigid. No air should get between the cloth and the foam. The next day it was obvious air had got in. More blasted bubbles, too many to ignore. These would weaken the fuselage. I would have to cut most of them out and patch them. It would use up precious time. Another setback. How far exactly to the end of my tether?
I'm in a bad mood because I'm tired of not having a day off. I'm tired of building this airplane. I'm tired of coming up against what appear to be insurmountable obstacles in the building of this airplane. I'm tired of having people watch me build this airplane. I'm very reluctant to have anyone from outside look at this airplane. I just want to crawl in a hole in the ground, but I can't. You know, I'm stuck with this, so I have to bare my soul. I have to let other people come in here and point at my airplane and laugh.
Is it the same, do you imagine that that's what it would feel like as if you were standing there without any clothes on in front of all these people?
Without clothes on, I look better than this airplane. You know, so that basically,
so no.
It's worse.
No,
it's worse.
It was time to pay Ralph another visit. He's the voice of sanity in this enterprise. But Ralph wasn't there to help. The fates were in full flight against us.
Bob, Ralph has had a setback. I've taken him to the doctor. He says leave parts if you want. Tried to reach you. Okay. Let's leave we'll leave a drawing for Ralph, and I'll talk to him on the phone later. Okay.
I wasn't going to give up. Okay, I wouldn't have a 30-day plane, but even a 60-day one would be pretty impressive. I struggled on, but by now even the simplest things just wouldn't go right. I was trying to cut 4 strips of fiberglass to fit in my wing spar. It kept breaking my saw blade, so I used a tougher saw. It also would have been smarter to wear a mask, but I had stopped being smart long before. And now I couldn't get the saw to follow a straight line. Each day my gloom deepened. Each night I went home exhausted, and I kept thinking of all the mistakes I had made.
If I could be 16 years old again, I would do things very differently. I'm not sure I'd be any more successful or any happier, but I'd do things very differently if I knew what I know now. If it was 25 days ago and I was starting out this building project, knowing what I know now, this plane would look very different and it'd be done. But it's not. It's not done. It's overambitious, and it's not done. And all I can do is keep plugging away. I mean, you know, compared to most planes that take 3 or 4 years to build, this thing's going to take a very short time. And it's going to be a perfectly adequate airplane. But it's frustrating to know that I could have done it so much better if I just thought a little bit. If I had just thought. Which, of course, is something I should have done more of when I was 16, too.
It was time for one final all-out effort if I was to get the structure done by day 30. So, surprise, surprise, I called for help, and my friends came to the rescue. Bob Kane, a computer friend, volunteered. So did flying enthusiast Emily Biss. Even my cameraman Paul did something. We fitted bulkheads and put the foam and fiberglass in the upper fuselage in a day. The same job on the lower fuselage had taken a week.
I'm 43 years old, and I think it was somewhat less than a week ago that I really began to learn the value of teamwork. Having help on this project has really, well, it's been helpful. Well, I'm not used to help. I'm used to help being a hindrance. You know, oh, I'll help you, which means A, I'll criticize your work, right, or B, I'll slow you down, or C, all the above.
I get no tips from champagne.
That day, for the only time since this project began, I felt happy.
Flying up high with some gal in the sky is my idea of nothing to do. But I get a kick out of you.
The singing kept up our spirits, but couldn't hide the reality of the situation. This team effort had come just too late.
Makes a very fine bed.
Day 27, the inner skin of the upper fuselage. No engine, controls, instruments, bulkheads, landing gear, just false hopes and a TV crew demanding results.
And part of the humiliation of television is that I am continually faced with the reality of what I haven't succeeded. They forced me to write this plan last week, and I can tell you how far exactly that we've made it through it. Fortunately, what was supposed to be done last Monday, it has been done. What was supposed to be done last Tuesday has been done. And that's it. So, in the last week, apparently, according to this, I've done 2 days worth of work.
Drill a hole through the stuff.
In the garage, things slowed to a crawl. The frustration of this project began to take a toll on our relationship.
I broke it again.
Yeah.
Broken drill bits were followed by sharp words.
I broke another bit. I must be doing something wrong.
Yeah, I guess so.
And I shouldn't break one like every 15 minutes.
No, you shouldn't break one every 15 minutes. Did you manage to finish the part?
No.
Katie had done her best and supported me with all her heart, but now she was worn out.
It's really hard. It's really difficult and slow and arduous and painful. I'm tired. I'm really tired. And what is it, like day 29? So, we have ways to go, that's for sure.
It was day 29. Katie was right. In fact, everybody seemed to be right but me. These daily reminders of my failure were needling me, especially Paul, the director, with his camera constantly in my face.
Yes.
I felt both guilty and angry.
I made some major errors. That does not mean that one could not build an airplane in 30 days. One could.
But why didn't you think about it?
Because I was an idiot. I don't know. I made a mistake.
Well, that was good, Bob. No, it was. It was good to hear, you know, some sort of explanation. Right?
I think you two need to just get out of here.
Why?
Why don't you just... I'll finish the plane. Just leave.
When would you finish it?
I don't know, Paul. When it's done.
But the point is it has to be finished in a certain time.
Who said that was the point, Paul?
That's the name of the show.
Change the name.
What should we call it instead, then?
I don't care. I don't care.
Yes, you do. I know that's not true.
I took the upper half of the fuselage out of its mold. A small victory. But did I feel depressed that day? And angry? I'd finished with the mold and tried to relieve my frustration by smashing it to pieces. Then, to cap it all, I heard that Ralph's illness was very serious. He was in intensive care after a heart attack. My father died of a heart attack. My father was never sick a day in his life, at least from that. Boom, he was dead. I thought about that when I heard about Ralph. I thought about losing a parent. It's hard. Day 30, a red letter day. There's a dream that actors have before they, in the nights before they go on in their performance. And here's the dream. The dream is that they're on stage and someone gives them the cue line and they can't remember their line. And the person who gives the cue just keeps giving it again and again, and no one helps, no one improvises, and ultimately the actor has to stand on the stage and confess that he doesn't know the line. He has to turn to the audience and say, I don't know the line, I'm sorry. Day 30. Airplane in pieces. Clearly, I didn't make it. Good news and bad news. Ralph was recovering, but out of the blue California skies came an angel of doom. Weeks ago, I had bragged to aviation journalist Peter Garrison about my plan. He was skeptical, but I ignored him. I even invited him to visit me to see my plane. And now he was here.
Good arrangement.
I was desperately hoping that he would encourage me to continue. I wanted him to say I had built, if not a complete plane, at least most of one in 30 days. That might give me the will to go on.
Bold, actually.
But what Garrison saw did not impress him.
So, I mean, I would say that you're, between 5 and 7% done. And the thing about airplanes, well, as you know, you've built airplanes, so you know that what looks like an airplane is just a fraction of the airplane. Far from thinking that this could be done in another month, I think it could easily take 3 or 4 months, 5 months. It's very hard to say, because what's been done so far is the easy stuff. And I might say that it's been done in a very quick and slapdash way, and I don't know. I wouldn't want to be the first person to fly it.
By the time Garrison flew home, my project had turned into a nightmare. His brutal verdict was like a kick in the guts. I was beginning to crack. I felt humiliated. The final straw was the camera crew, circling around me like vultures. I couldn't take it anymore.
Get out of here. Get out of here.
Why? I mean,
Get out of here. Leave. Right now.
Or what?
Or I'll just have to beat the shit out of you. Now leave. Guys, leave. I'll break the camera. I will break the camera.
This was my darkest hour. I felt a failure. I hadn't come near to building my plane in 30 days. The words of my doubters haunted me. I remembered what Ralph had said at the very beginning.
Do you think I can do it?
No. I remembered what my mechanic colleague Andy from my first ever job in England had said.
Well, you send me the fiver when you haven't done it.
Okay.
The most painful memory of all was Peter Garrison's reaction when I had first shown him my plans.
I would just figure you were a nut. I just can't imagine how this could be done in that little time.
I couldn't help remembering my father. Was I going to end up like him, never finishing what I started? But even now, at my lowest point, I wasn't going to give up. Maybe I couldn't finish this plane, but I decided I would still build a plane in 30 days. As Scarlett O'Hara said, tomorrow is another day.
Will Bob ever get off the ground? Find out when we return in just 2 minutes with the final part of Plane Crazy. To learn more about Bob Cringely's Plane Crazy experiences and his other online activities, visit PBS online at pbs.org.
WTTW offers a unique world of programming that is not available anywhere else. The support we receive from viewers is vital in order for us to maintain a program schedule of the quality and diversity that you've come to expect from WTTW. If you've never given to Channel 11 before, here's a quick and convenient way to do so. By calling 1-900-288-1111, you can give a $15 gift to Channel 11 that will help pay the cost of the programs that you enjoy. When you make the call, please listen to the brief recording. When you do, $15 will be automatically charged to your phone bill. The support and help of viewers like you enables us to broadcast an array of television programs that not only entertain, but also educate, enlighten, and inspire. Thank you.
Next on Mystery, Poirot receives an early Christmas present.
Don't you believe in forgiving your enemies?
If I had an enemy, I would cut his throat.
My family hate me, you know.
It is not hard to see why, Monsieur Lee.
Why did my father-in-law ask you to come, Stone?
He told me that his life was in danger. But is it not a possibility that Simeon Lee did in fact commit a suicide, but wanted it to look like murder?
Hercule Poirot's Christmas on Mystery.
It's Christmas in July, tomorrow night at 8.
Hi, I'm Chris Jussel, and this is the Antiques Roadshow, coming to you this week from Concord, Massachusetts. Searching for hidden treasures from attics, basements, and living rooms from all over New England. That's the Antiques Roadshow. Don't miss it.
Join us in Concord, Friday at 8. On the 11 Watch, a Springfield insurance company says it plans to offer a policy to cover teachers and other school employees who fall victim to violence at school. Horace Mann Life Insurance Company says the policy will cost $4 a month and will give violence victims a $20,000 lump sum payment and coverage for hospital bills. Chicago's weather, mostly cloudy tonight, a low in the mid-60s. Thursday, cloudy, less humid, high near 80.
The tower has cleared us for takeoff, so we now return with the final part of Plane Crazy.
So now I'm destroying 6 weeks of my life. This carnage all began when I boldly promised some TV executives that I would design, build, and fly an airplane in 30 days. I was so confident I'd let them videotape my progress day by day. Maybe the glass fiber dust will jam the camera. But even this disaster can't destroy my love for flying. Can you imagine how it would feel to fly a plane you built past the Golden Gate Bridge? I wasn't going to be defeated. We Cringeleys never quit. Per ardua ad astra is our family motto, through hardships to the stars. But we do know when to make a tactical retreat. So I took a chainsaw to my partly built plane. I knew it would never fly. I couldn't stand the sight of it anymore. But I also knew I couldn't walk away. The loss of face would be too much to bear. If it meant starting all over, so be it. I had learned the limits of my abilities, and perhaps that made the whole painful experience worthwhile. At least I now knew I couldn't do it alone. I needed help. I surfed aviation sites on the World Wide Web. I read hundreds of back copies of Plane Builders magazines. Eventually, I found a small company in Ohio whose boss, once he'd got over the shock, was brave enough to offer to help me build a plane in 30 days. As it happened, I grew up in Ohio. This was where my father had introduced me to plane building. My obsession was bringing me full circle. This part of Ohio is hillbilly, church-going country. Here, in a small factory at the edge of the Portsmouth airfield, Mike Fisher builds his planes. It's a family affair. Wife Lena does the books and ships the kits. Elder son Todd does most of the building. He's also a preacher. His sister Cindy helps out in the workshop. Neighbor Kyle Knorr is the engine expert. Bob Henshaw, a retired crane driver, is the other main builder. Finally, there's Mike himself, boss, designer, and the guy who will share my challenge. The plane we're going to build is called the Youngster, Mike's version of a 60-year-old German biplane named the Jungmeister, which was designed for aerobatics.
And they built the single-place competitive version, the Jungmeister, specifically for the 1936 Olympics, which were held in Berlin, and was the only Olympics that included stunt flying as a competitive sport. So, because the Germans, the host country can add a couple of sports, and they felt that they would win the aerobatic championship if they added it. So they added it, and they developed an airplane specifically for it. This is the Reich.
And did it win?
Yes, of course. It kicked ass.
Yes. I personally think it's ugly. I think it's so ugly that I think it's cute or whatever. I just like it. So I just thought, well, I'll just kind of redesign everything, make it a little bit larger, and make it look like the standoff scale of this airplane. So that was my inspiration to do the Youngster. Go ahead and say the next day we'll see.
Before we started, Mike and I made a schedule, planning the tasks day by day.
The following day we'll take the big event of flying the airplane.
Okay.
And that should kind of like have us finished up.
28 days.
Yeah.
28 days.
Yeah.
Wow.
28 days? Here's a guy who's as optimistic as me.
We certainly hope it gets here.
Time to turn a pile of wood and aluminum tubes into Bob's 30-day wonder plane.
This one's shorter.
It was so different from last time. I was no longer a loner. It felt like we were raising a barn. Even the smell here was an improvement on my garage. Believe me, wood and glue is much easier on the nose than fiberglass and vinyl ester resin. In the first 2 days, we built most of the wings, the rudder, and the pedals. At this rate, building a plane in 30 days might not be such a long shot after all.
Aero Man.
That's right.
By the third day, we were building our fourth wing. It was so simple, much like building a model plane as a kid, though there were differences.
These lattice strips that we're putting in, this is one layer here and there'll be a second layer underneath, they take the torsional loads in the wing, the twisting loads in the wing. Now this geodetic construction was actually invented by an Englishman named Barnes Wallis when he was designing the Halifax bomber before World War II. And it's very damage tolerant, and as Todd has told me, whenever you have anti-aircraft damage on a airplane like this, they always fly home, right?
That's right. Always. Well, not always, but most of the time.
Okay.
The key guy in our team, and the guy who's assembled more of these planes than anyone, is Mike's son, Todd. He clearly relishes challenges. Recently, he became a preacher and started his own church.
You know, I felt like I was called to preach, you know, called into the ministry. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
Because that's, like I said, that's not me. I don't really enjoy getting up in front of people.
Mm-hmm.
I just felt led to do it, you know. Felt like the Holy Spirit was leading me that way, so that's the way it went. Just have to go where God follows you.
Well, you know, I feel led to put this glue on this on this spar.
I'm glad you do.
In fact, God gets a lot of respect in this part of the country. My other helper, Bob Hanshaw, took up building and flying planes just a few years ago and credits God with his success at both.
You can kind of feel like that God has his hand underneath you when you're going along. You know, he's in control of everything anyway. And I just feel like kind of like he's holding that airplane up. I mean, I know how it flies by speed and the air pulling you up or the wind, but it's kind of like that he's just got his hand under you and he's holding you there.
It is a miracle just how strong and light you can make things out of good old-fashioned wood and glue.
This was 11 pounds, and it is very light, and yet it is a super strong structure. And I'll give you a little bit.
Mike proved the wing's strength with the help of his grandchildren. He put blocks under the wing except at one corner.
So there's no support under here.
Right.
When 112-pound Michael Paul stood on the unsupported corner of the wing, it didn't even look like bending. Back in the shop, it's day 4, and we're cooking with gas. The next step was to build the fuselage. It's simple, a box frame of wood which we would later cover in cloth.
Well, these are this is a fuselage side for the airplane, and this, fortunately, we have this jig to work with, so all we have to do is cut and fit the pieces of wood into it. These are the longerons are the pieces that go from nose to tail, and then these uprights fit in between. We're making 2 sides that are like ladders, and then eventually we'll connect them together and put cross pieces and complete the rest of the fuselage. And I'm just really thrilled because compared to all the mold making we were doing, this is going a lot quicker. You know, it's just really wonderfully simple to do.
As we assembled our plane out of wood and glue, I couldn't help thinking that the Wright brothers would have felt at home with what we were doing. The workshop where they built their 1903 Flyer was just 150 miles from here. Our materials have improved, but the principles we follow are the same as theirs.
This is the seat bottom, and this is the seat back. And I'll be sort of, you know, sideways like that with my big tuchus right here. So, we Cringeleys are known for our big tuchuses. So.
Todd's sister Cindy is doing her bit for the family firm.
My brother and I are kind of a surgery team.
Yeah.
I know when to hand him the screwdriver and when to hand him the pliers.
Yeah.
So we work quite well together. He knows what jobs that I can handle and what ones I cannot.
The kids, you know, they just kind of grew up working with me, and and the wife, she's worked with me a lot. We used to do a lot of construction work, and from time they was just toddlers. I mean, they was just always there working with us if they wasn't in school.
Who's the boss?
In a sense, we kind of don't have a boss, you know. As long as people just go along and do their job, you really don't need to boss them, and that's probably a major help in keeping everything in harmony here.
The job was going much more quickly. Partly this was teamwork, but partly it was the simplicity of Mike's design. The fuselage of this plane is essentially a long wooden box. It may not be as sophisticated as a fiberglass plane, but it sure is quicker to build.
This is the basic fuselage box. We got the sides built. We put in the cross members on the upper part. This is built upside down, so what's lower is upper. And tomorrow we'll put in the diagonals and the cross members here and hopefully pop this thing out. And here's the plywood part of the firewall, which is glued in place.
Perhaps the most amazing thing about the Fishers was how they took me, a complete stranger, into their family without a moment's hesitation. The atmosphere couldn't have been more different from the hell that was my garage in Silicon Valley. Hey, I was even enjoying myself.
I did a little bit of flying on in movies, and I flew in this World War I movie. And there was a guy who I flew with. We flew replica World War I biplane fighters. And there was a guy I worked with. His name was Neil Williams. He's dead now. And he was many-time British aerobatic champion, European aerobatic champion, really a terrific pilot, former RAF test pilot. And probably the best pilot I ever knew in my life. And he was one of the pilots on the film. And he had to do this thing where he was shot down and he would spin down and go behind the hangar. You know, the camera would be situated such that the plane went behind the hangar and he'd pull out. And he did this thing where he was hit and the smoke billowed out and he's starting to spin down, and he pulled out and the director said, well, that's just really great. You know, but could you just pull out just a little bit lower? And so they did another take, and he spins down, and the director says, that's really cracking, but just a little bit lower, please. So he does one more, vroom, 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 crash, spins it right into the ground behind the hangar, and then he walks around the hangar and comes out. He pulled himself out of the wreckage, walked around, and he said, is that low enough?
Day 8. Already it was time to worry about the engine, an old Volkswagen from an earlier plane I'd built. Remember that old advertising slogan? If only everything in life was as reliable as a Volkswagen. Or so I hoped.
It looks about the way it looked.
Now we're deep in hillbilly country. That's how they describe it, not me. I'm taking the engine to Kyle Knorr.
I find myself, you know, spontaneously wanting to sing the theme from the Beverly Hillbillies. Come and listen to a story about a man named Jed, a poor mountaineer, barely kept his family fed. And then one day he was shooting at some food, and up through the ground come a bubbling crude oil, that is, black gold Texas tea.
Kyle doesn't say much, but like Scotty in Star Trek, he knows engines. I hope my dilithium crystals are in good shape. Kyle has an eye for collector's items.
You have a lot of old stuff around here. Do you prefer it?
Yeah.
Why is that?
I like to restore things. You know, small projects, just tinker.
How do you pay for it?
I do telephone work, mostly. Cable splicing. That's where I work, you know. This is kind of a second deal.
Yeah. No, that's fine.
Kyle's job was to make sure the engine was working properly before we put it in the plane. After all, it hadn't been used in anger for over 2 years.
If it's a lot of trouble, just don't worry about it.
I should have this pretty well done today, the exhaust system.
Mm-hmm.
Then I'll start on the intake as soon as I get this done.
Are these engines pretty dependable?
I've heard they are. I've never had an experience with them, but they say they are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's day 11, and the fuselage is shaping up nicely. We're putting in the seat back. Like everything else in the Youngster, it's basic. Just a piece of wood. Cushions are extra.
All that great myself. At that time, anyway.
Yeah.
Now for the fuselage behind the seat. It has a peculiar name.
This is the turtle deck. And it's called the turtle deck because it's not called, I guess, the the amphibian deck. I don't know. It's just called the turtle deck. And it's the upper part of the fuselage behind the cockpit and in front of the fin. And we build it up so that the air can flow smoothly along this area. But this structure that we're building is non-structural. I mean, it's a non-structural structure. What the heck does that mean? It is this structure that we're building doesn't carry any of the major loads in the airplane. It just basically directs the air and looks cool. That's it. It looks great. You know, just having the turtle deck finished. I know the bottom stringers are still to go, but the shape is there, and the fin and rudder are on, and the horizontal stabilizer. It just has a very jaunty look about it. You know, it's such a cute little biplane. I'm really, really, really looking forward to flying it.
Time to install the wings. Now the plane was beginning to look like the real thing. It may not be rocket science, but it's a great feeling as the different pieces of simple wood come together and start to resemble a real airplane.
Okay. That should do it.
It's very satisfying 2 weeks into this project to be looking at a three-winged airplane. And I can only, you know, we're what? We're less than 2 weeks from flying this thing. Oh, uh-oh. I'm less than 2 weeks from flying this thing. I forgot. Yeah.
Attention, please. We've reached a milestone.
Here I am about to put my foot through the wing as I get in for the very first time. This is a ritual.
You can step on the seat.
I can step on the seat. Mm-hmm. This is a ritual that every home builder has to go through often, hundreds of times.
That's right.
In the construction of the airplane. What's critical here is not breaking the structure as I get in, and also seeing if it fits me. There we go. And now we make the requisite sounds. Well, this is fun.
Few coughs, few sputters. Forced landing.
No, not in this. Well, maybe a few. This is fun. This is fun.
Sitting in what was now recognizably a plane, I should be happy, but I knew the toughest part was still to come. In the youngster tradition of why make things complicated, there was nothing fancy about the pedals.
One on the boat.
The control stick is just an aluminum tube which is connected by a rod to the elevator. This movement makes the plane pitch up and down. And these are called ailerons. They make the plane bank to the left or right. All this may seem flimsy, but my concerns are deeper.
For me, it's not the, oh my God, I'm being held up by wooden glue thing. It's a general, what is it again that is keeping this airplane in the air? It's not the structure, it's the aerodynamics that I get confused about from time to time. And I think, of course, that there's always the prospect that the laws of nature will be suddenly changed. And I'll no longer, like Wile E. Coyote, you know, goes out over the precipice and he's standing there just fine and until he realizes he's up in the air and then he falls. So. But this plane, you know, it's such a conservative design. It has such a low wing loading. We have a pretty good power loading, which is always nice. And, you know, it should fly like a little bird.
And just when it was all going so well, it rained. And boy, did it rain. It bucketed down without stopping for 3 days and 3 nights. It was almost biblical.
Even the gods are conspiring against me now. Look at this. We have the biggest flood on the Ohio River in 30 years. We're finishing this plane ahead of schedule, and it looks like the weather will keep us from flying it. in the 30 days. I have all the trials of Job, except, of course, for boils.
The rain eventually stopped on Sunday, and I thought it would be wise to go to Todd's church, which was temporarily in a room above a video rental shop.
Oh man, I don't know this. Oh yeah, I do. Out of my bondage, sorrow and night, Jesus I come, Jesus I come.
It was also the day my girlfriend Katie arrived from California. Initially, she hadn't wanted to come. After what we'd gone through building the other plane, she'd been reluctant to help me with this one.
The blessings God has given us as a church this morning are phenomenal. Now, it's not always an easy road. It's kind of bumpy sometimes, but it's well worth it. It's well worth it.
I persuaded Katie to come by promising her a better working setup and a sweeter me.
If your relationship to God is right on, then that also is a great adventure. I mean, it is an extreme adventure.
Yeah, 4 wings.
Ah, yeah, the wings. Wow. And I think about...
In the workshop, even Katie was impressed by how much progress we had made.
Oh, I think it's wonderful. I mean, it's really, really cute. And I absolutely have to say that it is so much safer than that thing that we were building. Because it just, you know, I don't know that it is, but it just, I mean, look at it. It's like a real little airplane, whereas whatever we were building before were just 2 hunks of fiberglass and with some, you know, stuff slathered all over them.
A week to go, and it's time to cover the plane with something to keep the wind out. Todd's the covering expert. He'll be teaching us all how to do it, once he's got his voice back. Too much preaching, I guess.
We're covering the fuselage. We are getting ready to cover the fuselage here. How we'll do this is I will cover the bottom first, and then we will go from side to side. I can't talk.
In the old days, they used Irish linen. Now we use a synthetic material called Dacron. It's pretty simple. Wrap the wooden frame and then glue it on.
I can see this is a tricky place to start.
Yeah. Come on down from this area where I've already got it glued. Get you a little bit more glue on there. Yeah.
This is non-shrunk Dacron, not the sort of material you would use for your shirts. When we iron this stuff, we want it to shrink.
Yes, the fabric shrinks real nice. It takes all your little bobbles away.
Todd has a foolproof but not very high-tech way of testing if the fabric is shrunk enough.
It means it's tight enough, the fabric's tight enough.
If it bounces.
If it bounces. Needs a little bit more tightening there.
Well, we're just over 3 weeks into constructing this airplane. It's been an amazing time, and now we're coming down to the countdown before flight. We have the fuselage, the undercarriage, or landing gear is here. We've finished the wings. We're just getting ready to do the final things. We have to paint it in black, then paint over that in yellow. We won't use a trim color. Then we have to put it all together, mount the engine, get all the bits put on in the next day or so, and then fly it. And of course, the big question right now is whether the weather will go along with this, because it looks like we'll make our 30 days. I'm pretty much sure we will. And this wonder plane, the only wonder now is, will it fly?
painting requires so little skill, even the camera crew and the producer can join in.
When we put on the fabric, it's porous and the air can rush right through it. So we cover it with paint and that fills in the pores and it allows us to support lift. The question is, have we got enough paint on? Believe me, I think we do, but we kiss it and see if we can suck air through the fabric. That was one of the least pleasant kissing experiences of my life, I'll tell you, but we passed. The wing is ready. So we can finish the plane, finish painting it, the cosmetic work, put it together, put the engine on it, and fly it very, very soon.
Kyle by now had finished with my VW engine. It was time to install it. The engine is the home builder's biggest expense. It's worth paying for. The one thing you don't want when you're flying is for the engine to die. A biplane like this is a tough and resilient machine if properly looked after. It has to be, because in the air, if things go wrong, there's no easy way out. My father learned this at terrible cost. It happened a few hours' drive from the Fisher's workshop. In 1971, my father was flying a plane he'd just sold to the new owner. But a mechanic had forgotten to tighten a drain plug. 13 minutes after my dad took off, the oil drained out of the engine, which seized up. He had no choice but to make a crash landing in this field. Right here. My father was this supremely confident character. At least he behaved as though he was supremely confident. And so, in the process of gliding down, he was imagining, he must have been imagining what he was going to do after he landed the plane. Because he made every effort to do everything he could to preserve the airplane. He put down the airplane's landing gear. He had no hydraulic pump, he just had a little hand pump. So he pumped down the landing gear. It had wing flaps. He pumped down the flaps. He did all these things which were intended to slow up the airplane and allow it to land safely in this farmer's field. But what they also did was they created a terrific amount of drag. And he'd never landed the plane dead stick without an engine before. And he had so much drag that he couldn't get into the field he was aiming for. And as he was coming over the top of a barn, right at the base of this farmer's field, the plane stalled and spun into the roof of the barn. So it went through the roof of the barn upside down in this plane. And the plane never hit the ground. It got caught in the rafters of the barn. And my father was thrust forward into the instrument panel of the plane. There were no shoulder harnesses installed in the plane. They didn't used to have to be. And his face went through the instrument panel. And he ended up curled in a puddle of blood in the upside down airplane with 84 gallons of gasoline leaking all around him. And the still warm engine ticking there. Well, a couple of teenage girls found him and actually helped him out of the plane. And he had horrible head injuries. He lost an eye. He had a leg injury that meant that he limped the rest of his life. And he had some brain damage. And it didn't immediately end his career, but it eventually ended his career. And it changed him emotionally for the next, well, you know, he lived another 20 years. For the next 20 years of his life. I mean, in a sense, maybe he should have died. Or maybe he should have not tried to save the plane. Because if he'd left the flaps up, if he'd left the gear up, if he'd landed on its belly, he would have walked away. We were getting very close to my first flight. In another day or so, I would have to fly my plane. I was sure that my helpers would leave nothing to chance. But no one has flown this plane before. No one can predict how it will handle or if the controls are properly aligned. Believe me, flying any plane for the first time is scary.
I've been spending some time with Bob, and I can tell he's pretty nervous. And he does get nervous about things, but he's really nervous right now, and that kind of shook me up a little bit. I think he's remembering a time about a year ago when he went to buy an airplane, and he flew it, and he made kind of a bad landing and kind of a crash landing in some trees, and there were several people around looking at him, some crop dusters, some pretty experienced pilots, and they saw it happen, and I think he was really embarrassed. So I think that's kind of in the front of his mind. But I think in terms of safety, I think he's going to be fine.
By now, all the arrangements were in place. The Federal Aviation Administration had been informed. That's the government department with responsibility for home-built planes like mine. They told me to go ahead and fly.
It's done, baby.
Just about. Yeah, just about. Suddenly we have 10 knots of crosswind. Where did that come from?
Are you worried about that? I said 20 miles an hour out of the southwest is what the forecast was.
Now this is coming more from the southeast.
What do they do?
It's coming, well, you can see the windsock.
Oh, over there.
Yeah. You want to fly up the little hole of the windsock and out the big hole.
Oh.
I'm ready.
With the plane finally assembled, there were some last-minute checks to make. First of all, the plane had to be weighed with scales at both ends.
And it's very important that the center of gravity be within a certain range. If it's too far aft, then the airplane is too tail heavy, and that means that the control inputs can be too sensitive and it can be too difficult to fly. If it's too far forward, that means that the airplane actually becomes too stable, and it can again be difficult to fly for an entirely different reason. So we want it to be within a specified range. Now we've built this plane very carefully, sure, and so we're relatively confident that it's within the specified range. We'll know in a few minutes.
The plane weighs 393 pounds. My car weighs 8 times as much.
There you go, right in there.
Uh-huh.
Okay, 169 and a half.
They found out it wasn't free. I'm getting some arguments about that.
It wouldn't be the end of the world if the center of gravity was in the wrong place. For the first flight, we could make some temporary adjustments. But as the test pilot, I wanted everything to be just right. A discrepancy would not help my morale.
Exactly. Yeah, we're going to be out. A little bit. We're going to be after a little bit.
Well, so how do we handle that one?
Well, I'll figure that one out. Do you want to, meantime, do you want to take it down and put some fuel in it and start getting it fired up?
Yeah, let's do that.
And you could even taxi it like that.
Yeah, sure. And we have to hook up the ailerons and...
Yes.
The moment of truth had arrived.
Okay.
After a couple of turns of the prop, my trusty VW engine would spring into life and I'd be taxiing down the runway.
What did we bet?
We're... Contact? Okay. Yeah. That didn't count? That was a sissy prop. Contact?
Working their way in.
Yeah. I'm a wimp!
Get your dollars out, Bob.
I'm a wimp!
Okay, back to idle.
Back to idle.
Hot.
Switch is on.
Nothing. Not even the faintest cough from the engine. I thought at first it was me, a wimp used to electric starters. But then the others had a try and the engine stayed silent as the grave. With every pull on the prop, my stomach grew tighter, my nerves more frayed. Something was obviously wrong with the engine. I know it's better to find these things out on the ground, but after all the buildup, the disappointment was shattering.
Take them oars off.
Well, this was just about as bad as it could be. Even my reliable VW was letting me down. This project seemed to have a jinx on it. Still, it was only day 28. We could surely fly tomorrow and still beat our deadline. We need to fix the engine first. These setbacks were doing my confidence no good at all.
What I hope is that at some point, tomorrow, I find myself tracking straight down the runway, rising gently into the air, banking a bit to the left, banking a bit to the right, getting a feel for the controls, and suddenly realizing that I have perfect command of this thing. I certainly know every part of it. I understand implicitly how it's constructed and why it stays in the air. There's no reason for me to believe that it won't be a very good flying machine. And tomorrow, I can have that moment where I'm in the air and I suddenly become one with it. At that point then, all worries, all cares drop away, and I have this sublime flying experience that people talk about and I talk about. You know, being in the sky, being as a bird, flying effortlessly. I hope it happens. But of course, there's always the fear that it won't happen, or that somehow any skills that I have after many years of flying will disappear, will go away. And of course they'll always do so because there's 2 or 3 cameras present, and perhaps you're watching, and I feel naked in front of you. But what can you do? You know, I'm committed to doing it. I'm going to do it. And you know, afterwards, it will be fine. It will be better than fine. It'll be fabulous. It'll be fantastic. And I will feel great. And you'll see it in my face. And I'll feel it, especially when my feet are back on the ground.
Okay.
The next day, Mike decided to change the engine. He couldn't work out what was wrong with mine, so he installed the one from his own youngster. The other good news was that there was no problem with the center of gravity. Mike redid his calculations and found out it was in the right place all along. Nothing could stop me from flying now, but knowing this didn't help my nerves.
I think the simplest thing to do, I think, is make a stick back in a couple of bolts.
Well.
Yeah. Well, it's cute.
It is cute.
It's cute.
You're cute.
I'm cute? Oh. Well, then we match. Elena, do we have a seat cushion?
There was one last ceremony to perform, to stick on my plane's registration number. I had asked for and got a very special number.
The N is every American registered plane starts with an N, and then we have 30 Delta Yankee DY for 30 days.
No, good.
Off I go again. Today was even worse than yesterday. Every first flight is a nail-biting experience, but our problems with the engine made this flight a much more daunting prospect.
Well, looks like he's ready to go. I'm nervous. I'm definitely nervous. I'll be kind of glad when this is over with. But I'm also really excited. So, you know, it's a big day.
That's more like it. The new engine sounds fine, so here goes. First, some taxi tests, then maybe a takeoff.
handles on the ground beautifully, if a little bit noisily. The next thing will be I'll get down to the end here and turn it around and taxi it back the other way, and this time I'm going to try to get the tail up. But it seems to be running fine. It's a nice little airplane. Now, no surprises yet. Of course, that doesn't mean I'm not scared.
I didn't think I was that nervous. I knew I was nervous, but then I went to take a picture and my hand was like going like this. You know, kind of like this.
Now we'll turn it around. I think he's a little nervous and a little careful with it, which he should be. It's time to get the tail up and go up in the air.
Okay, now we're going to give it some power here. Try to pop up that tail. Tail up, come on, tail up, tail up, tail up, tail up. Come on, tail up. I was just beginning to get my courage up when, watch the tail. Oh, Lord. What was I saying about not wanting to be humiliated? Take it from me, when your tail wheel breaks and you swerve off the runway, flying loses its appeal.
What happened?
I lost it out there on the runway someplace, and boy, did that change my life. Take a look at the tail wheel, Mike.
Okay, let's get a wheel and put it on it, and I'll take her down through there.
Okay. The Ohio National Guard was still in town delivering supplies to people stranded by the flood. They were having a lunch break, but when they saw my problem, they rescued my tail wheel. Now that's what I call putting your tax dollars to work. Big mistake to use a shopping cart wheel. Mike then tried the plane out and found another problem.
The engine's not turning up. I got like a couple dead cylinders on it there. I don't know why, but I thought it was Bob just driving too slow. He couldn't drive fast.
No. Okay then. By now, my TV producer had had enough.
Clearly there's a problem. You know, we certainly don't want anybody at risk.
Yeah, we don't want to get hurt in it.
No. Yeah. And I think, we've been trying to do lots of things, and clearly it's not working yet. And we've got to get it working before anybody takes off in it.
That's fine with me. I'll just continue on it.
Yeah.
Get it ready. Get it right. We'll take the other engine up to the fella and get him to get the engine running properly. We'll put the right engine back over on it. I'll go ahead and move the wings back. Should be able to have everything done within a week, 10 days.
Yeah. Okay, good. Well, that's what we'll do. So we didn't quite do it in 30 days then?
Yes, we did.
Well, actually, we did the airplane.
We built the airplane. We got the tail up in 30 days.
Right. Yeah, almost. Anyway, well done, everybody.
As the plane sat there, gripped by the earth, in the back of my mind I could hear my father's voice repeating what he had so often said to me. You could have made it. Well, not today. Not safely. But I would fly my plane. I would show my dad. Dawn and I'm back in Ohio. In the intervening weeks, we've fixed things on the plane that weren't working properly. We've reinstalled my VW engine, now completely overhauled. Hey, we've even attached a brand new shopping cart tail wheel and adjusted its springs. Katie's back, determined to see it through. Now my TV bosses send me off to do a video confessional. What are they expecting? A last will and testament? It's been a long trip. this building a plane in 30 days. I was overambitious. I thought it was easy. I thought building 5 planes taught me more than it certainly did. Somehow thinking that having built an airplane in 18 months, I could then turn around and do it in 30 days, well, I learned a lesson. And in another 15 minutes, maybe, I'll be flying it. I was nervous the last time. I was really nervous the last time. And it's not that I'm not nervous now, but I feel much more confident that the plane will fly okay. And I'm just eager to get it over with and to get to that point where then the flying becomes enjoyable. You know, probably a couple hours into flying this plane, which will be a couple days from now, it'll start to be really, really fun. And that's the whole point of flying. This kind of flying is to be fun. And building it was so arduous and so unfun that I can't wait for the good stuff to finally begin.
So this is it, the final showdown.
Well, I don't know about that, but I come with my...
Are you ready? Yeah, I'm ready. How about you? Oh, guess. Thanks.
It's time to kick the tires, light the fires, and fly.
Okay, Mike. Okay, switch on. Brakes set.
Is the wind a problem, Mike?
Not unless it gets more than what we're doing right now.
Bob took his shoes off?
Yeah, I've seen that. Maybe we ought to collect them up before they go through a prop, you reckon?
And it looks so effortless.
Yeah.
It's completely
Well, I
effortless.
guess a very relieved executive producer.
I bet you are relieved.
Very good. Isn't that marvelous? After all that, just one, boom, gone.
Yeah.
That's one of my biggest pleasures, is to see one of the airplanes that I've designed and built, someone flying it. I think I enjoy watching it fly more than I enjoy flying, actually.
It was all right for everyone on the ground, While they were busy celebrating, I had to land this plane in one piece.
They say your first landing in a home build is usually your best. I hope that's the case on this one.
Yeah, just right
there, Mike.
Right out in front of you.
We're down. Not good, but not bad.
After months of hard work, too many disappointments, and occasional despair, I had finally done it. I'd flown my 30-day plane. I'd certainly been changed by this roller coaster experience.
This has been my hobby for years, and I thought I couldn't get enough of it. But I never did it full time before.
Yeah, that would be great.
And sometimes the day is 15, 18 hours long. You go home dead tired. The rest of your life goes to hell. Your relationships suffer. I don't even have a business life anymore. No, I couldn't do this again. What I did was I took my hobby and I turned it into work. And I thought that that would bring me happiness. And what it did was it showed me that hobbies, at least for me, are best kept as hobbies. So I'll build another airplane. And it's going to take me 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, 10 years, who knows? And I'll enjoy every minute of it. But the minutes will be here and there and maybe next week.
To learn more about Bob Cringely's Plane Crazy experiences and his other online activities, visit PBS online at pbs.org.
Do 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 dweeda, do 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 dweeda, do 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 dweeda, do do dweeda. I'm swinging on a star. You'll say I've gone too far. I should be crazy, but I'm not. I should be crazy, but I'm not. I should be crazy, but I'm not.
Funding for this program was made possible in part